here in this capacity, I work for Mead & Hunt, which is the firm that's been pertaining to the update for Maryland, or Berlin's comprehensive plan, Maryland compliant comprehensive plan. Before we dive into this, I do want to recognize all the town staff. You guys can raise your hand, make sure everybody knows you're here. And then our elected officials and our planning commissioners. I think there's two of you tonight. Oh, three. Okay. So, you know, you do have some elected representation in the room. And then we'll move into it. And by all means, I'll answer questions throughout. Happy to do that. I'll introduce our team in a second, and then after, we'll be available to answer questions about any of the boards as well. So, quick agenda tonight. We'll go through what the project is, what exactly the comp plan is. We'll go through existing conditions and SWOT analysis of the town, and talk about our community engagement priorities and goals throughout the course of this update. Real quick, I'll let the Mead & Hunt team that's here introduce themselves as well.
Hi, Alicia Barber. Hi, I'm Cheyenne.
And then as noted too, GMB, which is a local firm out of Salisbury, is also assisting with the project. They're doing the water resources and water, the utilities, water, wastewater, stormwater. They're assisting us here. They have a long relationship with the town as well. So, quick update, or quick kind of background on what a comp plan is. So, comprehensive plan is a very overall, very broad, top-down view of the town's goals. It does not necessarily dive into specific projects, in fact, it usually doesn't, but it sets strategies that will then guide other small plans and projects and investment opportunities, et cetera, over the years. It is required to be updated every 10 years. It plans a much longer horizon, but it's updated every 10 years. It's overseen by the Planning Commission and voted on by Town Council. It is Berlin's plan. We have to meet a set of Maryland requirements for it to be legitimate, but it is Berlin's plan. The updated plan annual report gets submitted to the Maryland Department of Planning. MDP will comment, but they are not an approving authority. So they can say, hey, you missed this or whatever, go back at it, but they don't get to say yes or no to the plan overall. It does remain Berlin's plan. And it can be amended after adoption. There's an official process for that. So if things change in 5 years, you'll have to review the whole thing. Usually it's amended changes. The plan elements that are required by state law, and all of these will be in your plan. There's more, but these are the ones that apply to Berlin. You guys don't have mines, so mine does apply. Goals and objectives, which we'll get to. Land use, which covers your zoning codes, and how property can be developed. Transportation, obvious, all your transportation network, your roads, sidewalks, bus routes, etc. Housing policy, municipal growth, that's the boundary, how much is Berlin allowed to grow. Areas of critical state concern, wetlands, amongst other things, but that's what it is here. Primarily sensitive areas, also kind of ties into the wetlands. Water resources, so utilities. And then community facilities, which is community gathering spaces, fire halls, things like that, police stations, city hall, and then the implementation process. So since the 2010 comp plan, so we're actually overdue. For it to be updated every 10 years. Part of that is 2020, there was a push by the Maryland Association of Counties and the Maryland Municipal League, which does the same job for towns, which are two nonprofits that kind of unite all the towns and counties. And pushed for them to the state to let them slide what would have been the 2020 update cycle for two reasons. One, COVID. Two was that 10-year decennial cycle is exactly when census data becomes available every year. So it's like if we have to update our plan in 2020, but the 2020 census data isn't due or available to us until 2023, we're going off 2010 data. So they let the state allow all those to slide so you get behind the census data, which makes sense. It was a good thing. But what that does is put us now about 15, 16 years since it was updated, so we're due. Since 2010, we had 2010 comprehensive plan, and those are all that was at the top. Those are all your plans that have been done since 2010. So you've got the 2012 Historic District Guidelines, 2016 Berlin Falls and Wellness Park Plan, 2023 Rail Plan, 2024 Design Guidelines, 2025 Worcester County Greenways Master Plan, and the 2025 to 2028 Strategic Plan. All those are factored in and will the updated comp. Rough project schedule, so you know where we are in the process. We started back in the fall, had our first initial meetings with town planning commission. We're now in this spring 26 talking to the public and public workshops, which is why you guys are here tonight, to get a sense of where the public wants to go, where does residents want to go, where does Berlin want to go as an entity. And of course, we'll continue the cycle through summer. We'll spend most of the time drafting the plan based on your feedback and additional feedback we'll get throughout. And fall 26, we'll be finishing up the project. So existing conditions and a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis, which is SWOT, of the town as it exists. Demographic-wise, Berlin's in an advantageous position. So since 2010 to 2020, and that number's probably low because 2020 data was rough because of COVID, Berlin's population increased about 12.1%. So as of 2024, the projected population, and based on all surveys, is about 5,349. Projected growth through 2050, following the 1.3% pattern the town has followed over, a period of about 50 years, is you're projected to be about 5,518 on the current course, assuming no new housing or projects spike that. So every time the town has had a major population growth, it's been in coordination with a developer. Ooh, wrong way. Existing population density of the town. So downtown is obviously right there in the middle. It's one of the more dense parts of town, with the apartments that are above and the surrounding fourplexes that are on West Street and Washington Street around that downtown core. And then it progressively gets less dense as you move out from the core. Typical pattern of any small town or city, really. Demographics on split, so town's roughly half male and female, pretty normal. Median age is 39.8 years, which tracks nationally, but is low compared to the rest of the county. The rest of the county is actually in the 50s. So Berlin's young compared to the rest of the town, the rest of the surrounding area. Over 65, about 17%, again, normal demographic spread. (42% of Berlin's population has a bachelor's degree or higher. That's high. So the town is very educated. Median household income is $81,438, also high, even for Maryland. 1,973 total housing units. That's your limiting factor on growth. And household size is about 2.84, which normal.
Does the household mean one person, or is it?
Household is one unit, so like an apartment could be a household.
But it could be several people.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the average household size is 2.84 people. I mean, obviously you don't have any house that has a 0.84 person on it, but when you average it together.
Yeah, and it just falls out in the numbers. So you've got a mix probably of 2 to 4 person households. So you're falling around in that 3. Because you're on the younger side, you're falling in the 3-ish. Does that make sense? Industry employment, probably not a surprise to people that have lived here. Education and healthcare are the top for Berlin. Arts, entertainment, recreation, again, that's that coolest small town, close to Ocean City, that's your tourism. So that's your second biggest driver. That's your restaurants, your hotels. Professional, scientific, and management, administrative, etc. That's your third biggest. And then retail is your fourth. Public administration for a small town, that's about right. That's your schools and your town staff, your police officers, your firefighters. And then just general services declining from there. These are your job centers. So these are the biggest clusters. That big red dot, that's what was AGH, now Title Health Atlantic, right? So that's the biggest cluster in town. Shouldn't be a surprise, I think, to most people. The other big cluster here, that's Decatur. It's just outside, around the edge. The various factories that are along there, and of course the downtown core has, its clusters of retail and service jobs. And then this other orange dot down here kind of in the middle. This one that's not, I can't highlight very well, but this one is Elementary. so jobs. Easiest way for me to explain this chart. There are, on a daily basis, there are 2,828 people who come into Berlin for work, 1,922 people who leave town for work, and there are 353 people that live and work in Berlin. So that's your circular, who's going where, coming in. So you have more people coming into town to work than leaving, which is a good thing, so your job center. As far as like self-sustaining economy, it's like, okay, how do you get the 1,922 to stay? Realistically, looking at the numbers, a lot of them are healthcare or teachers, so they're just moving between different school systems and hospitals and things like that. Land use. So this is your existing land use as it sits right now. These are how properties are zoned and how they're being used currently. This is taken from Berlin's data, the town data, so we didn't adjust this at all, other than to show it better. The outside is the proposed green belt that has come up in discussion for probably the last 30 years. Land that was intended not to be developed. Then you have these commercial corridors. One is Decatur, so it's already developed. And Decatur. This is that commercial business district that used to be Harley and is now Harbor Freight. And then Oceans East is here, now built. Just for a sense of scale, this is that field behind Decatur, and then of course all the single family housing and various commercial throughout the town proper. These maps can be confusing, so if anyone has any questions, feel free to stop me. It's also behind us and I'm going to explain it. At any
I
time.
want to interrupt actually. So we call it the Harrison properties where the sports complex was proposed for. It's a growth area in the 2010 comprehensive plan.
It is. It's showing. This is your zoning.
Yeah.
So it's just showing it's zone commercial.
Right.
On the next, there's another map coming up. It's showing it's growth area.
Gotcha.
And it'll be pulled out. But yeah, I realize this color, the colors between the two maps are not the same.
What is the one across the highway there, the gray?
That one, that's that big farm lot that is in the town.
What is the zoning on that?
It is, as of right now,
I
it's
can't
just,
see it.
you see back there?
This is a land use, not zoning.
It's just other land. Yeah. It's just
What-
agricultural. Yeah.
They're making it a solar farm.
There's a golf course in this too.
Yeah.
Should have done the sports complex.
I'm pretty sure it's zoned agricultural currently, correct? It's probably what it is. I can double check that. Existing and proposed transportation network. So this is anything that's a solid line exists currently. You guys know the big major highways, 113 and 50. Main Street, so 113. 50's in purple, that's showing the bus route that runs up and down 50. Main Street's here. All the dash lines are proposed trails or bike connections coming from the 2024 Worcester County Greenways plan that we did. We had the data, so we pulled it in. That's all from that process that happened 2 years ago. Existing community facilities throughout town, including churches on this display. Churches, synagogues, and mosques. Environmental features. The big two in Berlin and the Eastern Shore in general. Historic properties, which is in the orange, and waterways / wetlands. Sensitive areas that the state cares about that have to be acknowledged and protected. You'll notice that Heron Park's in that area as well, so it's considered a protected area. So pulled most of this from the strategic plan that was recent within the last year or 2 years as a starting point. Then we went through it as well. But we did a SWOT analysis, so it covered the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for the town. Strengths and weaknesses are internal, things that Berlin can control. Opportunities and threats are generally external, things that the town can only react to, good or bad. So it is the fastest growing region in Maryland, and it sits at the regional transportation crossroads. And by region, it's not just Berlin, it's the area, the statistical area, so that encompasses Ocean City, Salisbury, southern Delaware. Town has a good, charming story character. It's been voted coolest small town for a reason, right? We're still hanging our hat on that for a good reason. And it's got a walkable downtown and residential neighborhoods. That is one of the most desirable traits of any town or municipality now, is the walkability. Weaknesses, there's older housing stock. The town is historic, so there are just older houses, historic homes need more maintenance. There's a lack of affordable housing. That's little a affordable. You can use not government-sponsored affordable housing, but something that people can actually get to, that they can afford. There's disparities in access to parks and recreation based on what neighborhood you live in. A lot of the public infrastructure is old, especially the underground infrastructure. Areas are prone to nuisance flooding, think east side of 113 and West Street. Areas of traffic congestion and safety concern, not major, but they're out there. And the areas that are not compliant with ADA, that just falls in with the aging infrastructure. The Americans with Disability Act covers like your sidewalk ramps and things like that, that make accessing town easier. Because the sidewalks predate a law, a lot of the stuff's not compliant. Opportunities. There are underutilized properties that have potential for higher value development. There's a lot of small or underdeveloped properties that might have a small building on them or a building that's been abandoned that can be redeveloped. So you can infill those to gain housing units without expanding the town's outer limits. Changing zoning ordinance can provide greater flexibility, attract higher quality new development. That falls in with the first one. State funding programs can support the town goals. There's lots of money out there for these goals, especially through Maryland Department of Housing and Community Development. And then there's high-speed communications infrastructure. There's high-speed internet here, and that matters more than anything to attract businesses now. And then, of course, your threats. So there's varying reactions, preferences, and priorities by different stakeholder groups. That is not abnormal. Every municipality has that. And finding ways to collaborate and bring those together is part of this process. General resistance to change, withdrawal of federal funding. That's not just Berlin. There was a general withdrawal of federal funding for a lot of these programs across the nation in the last couple of years. Upgrading, maintaining aging infrastructure. That's expensive. Funding went away. And then impacts associated with more severe weather and flooding throughout the area. So it's just, we're a low-lying area. The storms are going, or as they get worse, are just going to cause more flooding. Community engagement process. So here we are in spring 2026. The public workshop is right now. You guys are here. Thank you. There's an interactive website up. We can set you up with that link if you haven't already seen it. Flyers have gone out in a couple different ways through social media blast. And we have a pop-up, another public session we're going to do as soon as we have that schedule ironed out. It'll get posted. The website is up. Like I said, we'll set you up with the link if we have not already, or if you've not already seen it. Now let's get to priorities and goals. So, and we don't need to, I know a lot of people don't like to speak up in front of others, so we'll be around the room. You guys are more than welcome to come and talk to us about ideas and things you want to discuss, but kind of going through where the town is now and what we want to get to. So in 2010, land use and development called for the development of that green belt that we showed earlier with an interest in the urban growth boundary, basically restraining the town's growth so they can't overwhelm its sprawl, is the intent of that, and overwhelm the green, the agricultural areas of forest that surround the town. It was working on promote highway focused zoning around Route 346 and preserving existing community character. Adjustments to that for now, for 2026, based on issues that we've been told the town is having and through discussion. Identify opportunities to improve housing options, improve park and open space access, and identify underutilized properties for redevelopment opportunities. And as we go through this process, we'll play with land use scenario modeling. We have software to do that, and we'll work that out. That's just that note at the bottom. Different options that can be used. Transportation. The existing comp plan, as the 2010 plan, was very concerned about pedestrian connections across 113, connecting east and west, requiring traffic impact analysis for any new commercial development, for residential development for more than 4 units, which is a very low bar, very, very, very low bar. Developing a streets master plan to address items such as traffic noise and removing street calming devices. The new area, in keeping with the new focus of the town, things we're working on are following up the need to better connect residents on the east side of 113. That hasn't really changed, but with multiple travel modes, not just by car. address areas of roadways that frequently flood, and incentivize rather than discourage new development with more flexible traffic demand standards, again, concentrating on the infill development currently. Housing. Previously, it was on maintaining the community character and identifying the desire to create funding source for grant matching funds, promoting commercial development within town to provide more jobs, and developing an educational program to help owners and renters budget. So, switching that up, working towards identifying specific sites for new housing development, opportunities within the town for underutilized properties, maintaining and improving the housing quality as it exists, the aging properties specifically, and allow for more flexible zoning to allow residential uses in commercial areas where appropriate. Basically what that means is, hey, as long as it's not, in order to create more density, more housing units, you can, have a duplex or a triplex or whatever, as long as it matches the character. All three of these on West Street, right over there, are actually apartment buildings. They're multiplexes. You wouldn't know it. They look like single-family homes. Water resources. There's a big concern in 2010 for the water allocation capacity increases and account for infill and vacant lot development. Serving nearby areas that have failing water systems, some of that's driven by the state. They're trying to get away from septic systems. Implementing new development, stormwater best practice management, and requiring proposed annexation and growth areas to document non-point source runoff. These are broad things being pushed by the state, some of them for water quality. Good thing, just a regulatory process you have to get through. Not much has changed there for currently in regulation. So it's basically reviewing the current water usage, future capacity needs to give you guys the best recommendation, give the town the best recommendation for additional allocation. Considering options and areas for installing confined aquifer, identifying properties within nearby corporate limits served by septic systems that could be moved to the town's wastewater system. Again, water quality. Evaluate stormwater drainage network using updated standards, and then prepare for the non-point source pollution. That is a stormwater runoff program. It's designed to mitigate pollution getting into rivers and bays. That is coming down to the town from the state and really the federal government. All right. So, at this point, actually, I'll let you.
Yeah,
Trail.
thank you, Will. We can take a couple of questions if anyone has them. And we're going to be here for another hour, so you can take the time to speak with myself, Will, Cheyenne, anyone from the town. But what we really are hoping you can do is to just sort of go along and peruse the boards, and we have some draft goals and priorities on the boards, and we want to know if you're in agreement with what we have. So if you can there's stickers at the tables. If you can take a star sticker, and look, I've already bedazzled myself. Feel free to put one on yourself if you want. But we're asking you to put stickers on the statements that you would agree with. If you don't agree with it, don't put a sticker on it. And then if you have an idea that's not represented, you can write it on one of the sticky notes. And we have different stations, so there's transportation, there's environment and water resources, and economic development, and housing, and land use. So if you have a particular area that you're interested in, you can go to that area or visit them all. So we'll be here for until 8 o'clock. So, and you're welcome to stay until 8, or if you already feel like you got everything you wanted to get out of this meeting, you're free to go early. But, we really, we're here because we want to hear from you. When we write this plan, we want to make sure that it is representative of what the people of Berlin want this plan to be. And this is a great opportunity for you to share your thoughts with us. Yeah.
Do you write the plan, or does the planning commission write the plan?
We write the plan, and then we will be sharing it with the planning commission for their review and input. We'll revise it. We will be back here in the fall to present the draft plan and all the recommendations. And you all will have an opportunity to review it and comment on it again before it's finalized. When it becomes final when the town council adopts it. And I'm sure the town council will want to make sure that the public has had a chance to review and comment on it, and that it's generally something that you all are in agreement with before they adopt it. Yeah.
Can you give an example of how the housing plan would likely be changed from what it was in 2010?
So, I mean, at this point, we know that housing is a bigger issue now than it was in 2010. There's, you know, housing has become a lot more expensive and more difficult to obtain. And also, a lot of the housing stock is historic, and that requires a lot more maintenance, which makes that more expensive. So it might not be, you know, there's just an added cost when you have an older house that needs a lot more maintenance. That needs to be factored into the overall affordability of being able to live in that home. So that's something that we really want to look at, are ways to make housing better meet the needs, to make it something that's easier to afford.
How can they do that?
So there's different ways that we can look at doing that. A lot of times it's, you know, it's sort of like supply and demand. So there is not a lot of supply. That's been a limiting factor, as you mentioned. So when you have a very desirable place to live, like Berlin, but there's not a lot of options to buy, that just makes the prices go up. So that's one of the things that we want to look at, are opportunities to increase housing, but we also want to be really careful about not, you know, not making it so that, you know, it changes the character of the town, unless that's something you guys want. And, you know, if you guys want a lot more density of housing and like apartment complexes, that's something that we can do. That's what we're here tonight to hear. There's other ways to do that, though.
Less.
Yeah. So there's other ways that we can look at that too. And one way is looking at creating like what's called an accessory dwelling unit. Does anyone know what that is, or does anyone not know what that is? It basically, an accessory dwelling unit would be a smaller like housing unit within a bigger house. So you can potentially like convert your garage into an apartment and rent that out. And that's a whole new housing option that wasn't available without really changing much of the character of the town. So that's one idea. Or like having new housing that's built could be built as like a duplex or a triplex that looks like the other houses nearby, but it's actually 2 or 3 units instead of 1. That's another idea. Or looking at where new housing can be built. I mean, there are some undeveloped areas still, like more on the outskirts, but within the town boundary today. And so those could be opportunities to infill with more housing.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else have questions? I know you guys are just sitting here thinking through different things, and it's okay. We're going to be here. You can come up and talk with Will or myself or anyone from the town or Cheyenne. We're going to be kind of just, you know, walking around, standing by boards, answering questions if you have any.